Well, welcome to Wednesday. It is time for the Rick Corey Sports Special, and we talk a little broken arrow football with Josh Blankenship, their head football coach. Tough one against Norman North, 47-28. But this was a really tight game. It was 21-21 right before the half, Josh. You had a great performance by one of your tailbacks, who, of course, is really good. Mr. Robertson went 80 to give you guys a lead, and then it was tied. Then they got a late field goal. Second half was rough, though. Break it down for me.
We kind of went on fall break a little early there in the second half. Coaches included. I think we made some poor decisions, some fourth down attempts that they turned us down on. But some really bad turnovers in addition to the fourth down stops to come out and open the half. Well, even before the first half ended, we had a receiver catch a ball over on the sideline. We're expecting to go down and score. He catches a little short hitch over in the sideline, and he's just struggling and battling and trying to get more. And the ball gets stripped out, and they scoop and score. Then right before that, or right after that, we drove down and were able to punch one in, which was a good answer, but pretty unfortunate for a turnover in that situation. Then we come out in the second half, and we immediately march straight down the field after receiving the kick. We're down on the 1-inch line, and we QB sneak it. And one of those things that we've got to learn from, but instead of having the ball secured and driving our legs behind our big fellas, we were reaching the ball. And while the ball is reached out, waiting on an official to make a call, they strip it out, and we have another turnover right there when we should have had 7 points. And then we didn't play very good defense in the second half, and we're trying to play catch up at that point. It's one of those nights that keeps you awake for the next 4 nights, and trying to, because our kids played their guts out. It wasn't an effort thing. It was probably some guys pressing to do too much at times, and then not doing their jobs once we got frustrated and behind. And guys, again, not a malicious thing. It was just guys trying to do something to create. But when you stretch those things too far, and you get out of doing your job, specifically on defense, you're not going to stop anybody, especially against a really talented quarterback like they have.
Yeah, and we talked last week about Owen Eshelman, and he had himself a fine game, 5 touchdowns total. But it really sounds to me like more, and I only watched some of the highlights of yours, that it's an effort turnover thing, and they were, gosh, it was just at the worst times, weren't they?
It was nightmarish. I mean, it really was one of those worst case scenarios, where they played outstanding. They had a great plan, and they took advantage in a big way when we made mistakes.
And by the way, we're talking to Josh, brought to you by Tulsa Accident Care Center. You see our car right there. We'll tell you more about them in a few minutes. All right, coming off of one of those, though, you've got that unique situation in where you were on a 2-game win streak. You're in this game, and then it was just turnover. So those are teachable things. But then you mentioned frustration and guys trying to do too much. There are a lot of teachable things in here. How do you balance that in a week?
It's always a sense of urgency. I mean, we just don't have time to sit around and cry about it. We've got to get to work. And we talked a few weeks ago against the Yukon team where we kind of had a little bit of that going on, but we were able to pull ourselves out of it and win the game and hope to make that a teachable moment. So we never had that happen again. And here we are, and it happened again, and we weren't able to pull ourselves out of it enough to win. The kids are irritated by their performance, or maybe their lack of preparation on a fall break, compared to the way they prepared for maybe an opponent that they respected a little bit more in previous weeks. And I'm confident they've learned that and are making the most of it this week.
You're a guy who's been a tremendous player in your past as well, and I'm sure you can still zing it around. Can you describe what it's like when you're that guy in the huddle and you feel like it's on me, I've got to go make a play, and you're trying to talk yourself out of that? Or do you, I mean, how did you deal with it, A? And then how do you talk to your players about dealing with that, not doing too much?
Well, specifically for the quarterback, we remind him all the time that your job's not to score touchdowns. Your job is to move the chains. If you'll move the chains, the touchdowns will come. So making decisions in that mindset, we tell him we always want him to get us in 3rd and 5 or less. You try to give them some processes, some things that you hardwire into their brain. We talk to the whole team, all the players, all the time about do your job, bore me with your discipline, and the big play will come. I remember Denver Johnson used to say, do the ham and egg thing, do the ham and egg thing, and the big play will arrive. When you're trying to force the big play, that's when you get yourself into trouble.
Yeah. And it's a mental thing too. I'm sure it is, especially when you're really kind of trying to make that play. But you did have good play for some people. I mentioned Roberson. Who else on your side played well?
Zane Matthews, Boudreaux, one of our sophomore receivers, had an unbelievable night catching the ball. He's turned into quite the dependable threat out there on the outside. Cole Lamont on defense is he's just a man, and he's our leader on that side of the ball, and extremely proud of him. He does it every night we go out there, and so extremely pleased with his play. Our offensive line really probably had their best game against a really good box.
Hmm.
Caden Moody, our left tackle, is just turning into an absolute monster, and I'm incredibly proud of him. So there were a lot of really, really good performances individually, and then obviously wasn't enough, but definitely pleased with the guys that I mentioned.
You mentioned they were frustrated with their own performance, and that's hard when you get into a week of practice that you can carry that over. How have they done in practice this week, and how have you kept that from happening?
They're a great practice group. What we've been challenging them on is that extra preparation, that film that you've got to do on your own. That just a little bit of extra that you have a sense of urgency on if it's a playoff game, if it's a state championship game, if it's a big rival. But are you doing that when you're on fall break? Are you doing that when you are playing somebody that has a record that you don't think is very good? That's it. We talk about it every week. Anybody in this league can beat you, and you can beat anybody in this league. And if you don't prepare the right way, but they know that, they've learned that, and they're hungry. So they've responded in the way I thought they would. They're having a great week right now.
You mentioned rivals. You've got one coming up. We'll talk about them in a minute. I want to remind you we're sponsored, Josh, is by Tulsa Accident Care Center. By the way, open in Broken Arrow, just off Kenosha and 51. And if you ever in an accident of any kind, whether it's a car accident or other accident, you find out that you have a lot of things to take care of. You need a provider, you need a PT, you might need physiotherapy, you might need imaging, and you drive all over town for those things. But not without Tulsa Accident Care Center. Now they're in Tulsa, Wasso, and BA. So if you're watching from somewhere else, you can find them in those places as well. All those things are in one spot. And here's what I encourage you to do. Go to TulsaAccidentCareCenter.com and read the reviews from patients who talk about the way they're treated by the staff there. That's such a key thing. My daughter's had a 35-year battle with brain cancer. I know how you're treated is as important as what happens. I mean, certainly you want the treatment to go well, but those people and their attitude and how they take care of you is a big deal. I encourage you to look them up. So unfortunately, I mean, I hope you don't need them. Hope you never have an accident. But if you do, Tulsa Accident Care Center, you can find them at TulsaAccidentCareCenter.com. All right, so Union, and I don't have to say much more. I mean, that's one of those rivalry games. So is Jinx, so is Bixby, so is Owasso. When you look at this Union team, and I see them every week, you look at places where they're just magnificently talented, yet there are times they struggle as well. What do you see when you see them?
Well, offensively, we're same quarterback that is just unbelievably talented. He's got a running back that seems to be getting better and better every week, and is just he's electric. So if he gets the ball in space or finds a crease, he's going to be hard to catch. A monstrous O line that just can waller on people and allow that running back to find space or to give Shaker time to get the ball off. Shaker does a great job of getting the ball out really quick, so it's hard to pressure him. And then within the scheme, they do some things with their play action and their boot to really draw you in and sneak some guys back behind the secondary. Defensively, as it seems every year, there's this big cat daddy at nose guard that now this year he's a young one. I think he's a freshman. But it seems like every year you can just take a cutout of an athlete and put him at nose, and it's almost the same thing every year at Union. They've got some incredibly fast and talented corners, it's a lot of the same stuff that you see from Union every year. Just a lot of talent.
But as you mentioned, there are times when your team, you see somebody you know is a rival. How have they? I mean, do you feel that when it's a Bixby, a Jinx, a Union, and a Wausau, or are you feeling it this week?
Feel just the rivalry aspect
Yeah,
of it.
yeah, and then kind of the pickup of
Yeah.
the step.
Well, I think definitely the kids have a little bit more pep in their step for sure. Rivalries are a little weirder now than they were when I was growing up. I mean, it's we didn't want to hang out with our rivals. We didn't want anything to do with our rivals, and it's just different. These kids all know each other. Part of that's the internet age, social media. A lot of them go to church together. And you see one another all the time. I mean, all summer long. So you're just very familiar with everybody. And then, the coaching circles have all crossed paths and mixed and matched. So the coaches are very familiar with each other as well.
Yeah, you've been at Union, and of course, you got guys at Owasso a little bit at Union, and guys at Union a bit at Owasso. I mean, it does. It happens all over. And we always heard, in the day it was Union and Jinx, but now it's Union, Jinx, and like I said, Broken Arrow, Bixby, Owasso. That doesn't water this down, does it?
Not at all. It's just there's more every season, so it's not just one game a year or two games a year. It seems like it's every week.
Yeah. I want to ask you something as a quarterback. You mentioned Shaker, and I've been around the game a long time myself. Your dad has, and I'd love to hear what he thinks too. I don't know that I've ever seen a guy with a quicker release ever in high school and maybe even in college. This guy, I mean, he's a Marino quick when it comes with the release. When you see him as a player, if you were breaking him down as a scout, what would some of your thoughts be?
He's obviously very intelligent. I've never been around him and really ever met him. But he looks like he's a very coachable guy. He's what I would call not a system quarterback, but he is clearly bought into the system that he's coached. So he knows it inside and out, and he clearly knows what his play caller is going to call almost before he calls it. I would bet he's the type of guy that could go out and he could run the offense in practice and not need, a script or a coach to say what we need to work on. He looks like a leader. He seems very tough. The release is, like you said, incredibly quick, and he can do that from nearly any platform.
Yeah.
He can be going to his left and throw almost back to something inside of him, moving to his left with the same release, and it's really impressive. So the skill set's incredible, and he's going to have a great career.
Yeah, I mean, he's a Boston College commit, and obviously everybody hopes good things for him. Last thing, you mentioned the coaching moving around, and preparing for high school and college games. I hear a lot from coaches on both sides, and I hear a little bit more sometimes from coaches about scheme. We don't talk about it a lot, you and I, or I don't with all my high school coaches. I know it's important, but I don't talk about it as much. I'm not sure why. Maybe that's my fault. So I'm going to ask you a question that's going to sound probably really stupid, and maybe it is, but is scheme as important in high school as talent as it is because it is in college, I think.
I think at the high school level, the scheme has to fit your kids, your talent. And I think the best schemes with that first filter of it's got to fit the type of kids that you have and what they're capable of doing. Then I think the best ones are so universal that you're not changing it year in and year out. It'll carry every year.
Yeah.
At the collegiate level, you can recruit to whatever scheme you want, or at least you should. But it's you got to be more adaptable at the high school level on the front end of what's going to fit these kids and fit every year, and not only fit every year, but fit in my program all the way down to junior high.
Yeah, that's the tough thing. There's no doubt about that. Well, the good thing about this is it's a road game for you guys of about what, 15 miles, maybe.
Yep,
So
just down the road.
a little bit simpler. Well, be safe because I'd say travel safe because traffic between here and there is not probably any better than traffic between here and Norman. And we'll see you on Friday.
All right, Rick. Thank you.